Hey everyone, welcome to The Other Side of Addiction. This episode is brought to you by our platinum sponsor, Matter Behavioral Health in Mount Pleasant. Matter Behavioral Health is a substance abuse program, individualized treatment focused, providing real hope, lasting results, and being part of our family for life. And I will definitely vouch for those guys. I know a young man that went to their program, actually know a couple, and they just love this program. They do things a little bit different than what other rehabs do, which is really, really cool. So Matter, thank you for being a huge sponsor of The Other Side of Addiction. We greatly appreciate it. I am your host, Al Richards, and today we brought in a guest co-host, Sylvia. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes I do these alone, but it's always great to have somebody in the studio.
Thanks.
Yeah. And guys, we have a real special guest today on the show. We have Ed Bisch. Did I say your last name correctly, Ed?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. So we have Ed Bisch. Now, Ed, are you out of, is it New Jersey that you're out of?
I'm originally from Philadelphia, PA, but right now I live in South Jersey, which is more like a suburb of Philly.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was watching, so I watch other addiction podcasts, and I was watching this show, and Ed was on this show with Beth Macy, and Beth Macy is the author of the book DOPESICK. And there is actually an 8-part series on Zulu. And I tell you what, I highly recommend Zulu, right? Zulu?
HULU.
Oh, HULU.
Yeah,
my wife always corrects me. I don't know why I always want to call it Zulu, but yeah, HULU. So you guys that know that stuff, yes, it's HULU. Ed, thank you for correcting me. But I really highly recommend watching this series. And when I heard Ed's story and what had happened, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to reach out to these people and see if we can get them on the show, because every story is important. That's how we feel here. We want to get our listeners, especially those on the other side of the addiction, to understand addiction a little bit more, because we usually don't. We think we do, but we don't. But when I watched it and saw what Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family has gotten away with, and then hearing, and I'm not going to share anything because I want Ed to do this, but I'm like, gosh, we got to help get this message out there more. Yeah. We really do. So, Ed, I'm just going to turn things over to you, man. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then just wherever you want to take it, my friend.
Okay, thanks. Well, first thing, let me get this out there. It is on HULU.
Oh.
And people say, well, I don't have HULU. Well, you can sign up for 30 days free and binge it. So there's no excuse not to watch it. And it is really good show. Michael Keaton is great. He already won one award. This week is the Screen Actor Guilds, and he's probably going to win again. And Danny Strong, he did a magnificent job. And I'll get into it a little further, but let me talk about my story. So going back to February 2001, President's Day, 2001. So 21 years ago, as of yesterday, I was at work. I got a phone call from my daughter. She said, Dad, Eddie's blue and he's not breathing. I was like, call 911. I worked in downtown Philadelphia. I hopped in a cab. I only lived 15 minutes away. I'm saying, hurry, praying all the way. Get to the corner of my house. I jump out. There's an ambulance in front of my house, and I say, thank you, God. I'm running up the street. Then I noticed there was 2 guys sitting in the ambulance, and they said, sorry, sir. I said, don't tell me he's dead. They said, sorry, sir, nothing we could do. I ran in the house and my brother was there. He stopped me from running upstairs. And, I just couldn't believe it. And so next thing I know, some of Eddie's friends are outside. My son was Eddie. Eddie, he was a senior in high school. I knew they had a party the night before because they were all off for President's Day. I went outside and I said, "Tell me, what did he do?" They said, "An oxy." I said, "An oxy? What the hell's an oxy?" They said, "An Oxycontin. It's like a strong Percocet." I said, "No, my son's dead in his bed." And that's the very first time I heard the word Oxycontin. My son was laying in his bed dead from it. I went back in the house. I had my head down on the table. I was crying. In comes a police sergeant. He says out loud, "Oxy, kids are dying left and right from this shit." I was like, "What?" I jumped up. I said, "What? How did I never even hear this?" I was a guy who read the newspaper every single day, watched the news every night. My son's dead from a pill that I never even heard the name of. And then to hear kids are dying left and right from it. My immediate thought right then and there, it flashed through my head. I gotta warn everybody. And so as things went on that very night, me and my family, we had a fax machine in the house. We started to fax high schools, starting with Eddie's high school. Warning, there's a new drug out there. And the next day I was interviewed by the Philadelphia Daily News. We called a press conference. Every TV station in Philadelphia, and there was 5 stations at the time, they covered this press conference. And I was warning people about Oxycontin. I just knew, I just knew my son did it and he died. And kids got to be warned.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a week or two later, I get an email. Well, what happened was that Sunday I went on to a talk show, and I told Eddie's story on the talk show to again warn people. And so I started going on message boards, and so I started a little message board. But then after the talk show, someone volunteered to build me a website. So I started this website and I called it oxykills.com. And right away, I started getting emails from people. Well, I checked my email one night and I got an email from Purdue Pharma, the maker of Oxycontin.
Serious? Wow.
Yep. And they're like, "So sorry for your loss, Mr. Bisch. We want you to know that, our drug is great when properly used. It's when people abuse it that it's a problem." Made sense to me. It was FDA approved, right?
Well,
I'm
so
sure
we
it's a
think.
great drug. Properly used. FDA said so, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay. And we exchanged a few emails, and so right away, like I said, I was in the newspapers. Well, then I started to do research. So Eddie died in February of 2001. Okay, so in August of 2001, the very first congressional hearing on the Oxycontin deaths was held in Bensalem, PA, just north of Philadelphia. And why it was held in Bensalem, PA? There was a pill mill doctor in Bensalem, and he was flooding my neighborhood, not just my neighborhood, a bunch of the Philadelphia neighborhoods were flooded with Oxycontin from this pill mill. That came out in the paper. So I go to this hearing in 2001, and I'm sitting there, and the Congressman Jim Greenwood was grilling Purdue pretty hard. I'm listening to his tone. I'm wondering, what's up? So here he says, through IMS data, Purdue Pharma knows the exact amount of pills that doctors are prescribing. And then he says, and we had a pill mill doctor in this area flooding the neighborhoods with pills. And why did you guys not notify authorities? He said this to Purdue's president at the time. Well, he started to stutter. Well, the company lawyer jumps in and gives some lawyerly reply, but it wasn't a good reply.
Right.
And it didn't satisfy Greenwood. And that was the very first hint that I got that something was really rotten. And I went away from that meeting not, thinking something was really wrong. So I went away, and I still have my website, and I'm starting to get a lot of death and addiction emails. I also started talking with the Philadelphia Police Department. They had an anti-drug program called Heads Up, and they would go around the high schools, and I would go with them. And but what I didn't like, they were talking about marijuana back then and heroin. And they would give me 5 minutes to talk about pills. And I was learning pills is what the kids were really doing. I mean, they weren't going to jump to heroin, Yeah. And so I thought I needed more time to really talk about Oxycontin and stuff. So I wanted to start my own program. Well, back then the laptop was very expensive and the software. Well, so Purdue had emailed me a couple times, and they said, if you ever want to do anything about prescription drug abuse, contact us. So to make a long story short, I said to them, I was also getting a lot of emails from chronic pain patients saying that all this bad press about Oxycontin was stopping them from getting their drug, and they really need it. And I was empathetic. I agreed with them. I said, look, I'm not against Oxycontin, even though my website's called Oxy Kills. I said, it really should be called Oxy Abuse Kills, because that's what I'm talking about, abuse of the drug. So anyway, so Purdue invited me to come up, and they offered me a grant to get my program started if I talked about prescription drug abuse. And I said, okay. So I actually went to Purdue Pharma in Stamford, Connecticut. And there I talked to the president, or whatever his title was, David Haddix. So I'm talking to him, and I said, the only thing that's bothering me is about half the death and addiction emails I'm getting are from people who were prescribed Oxycontin. And he looked at me and he says, oh, well, they must be doing something wrong, because less than 1% of patients get addicted. And I'm thinking, I must be hearing from this 1%.
Yeah.
Then I also asked him, then he repeated the company line that I was hearing from chronic pain patients. You know, all this bad publicity is really hurting patients from getting the drug that they need. I said, so sales are down? He says, oh, yes, a lot. So I left Purdue that day, feeling a little uneasy, but I was excited to get my program started and talk to kids. So I got that rolling. I started talking at high schools. And then about 3 months later, after I went to Purdue, and they told me less than 1% of patients get addicted, and they told me sales were down, it came out in the newspaper that sales went up that year 43%. And when I read that, I knew that they were full of crap. And, you know, a lot of the other stories I was hearing about them promote, and, you know, pretty much they were saying that that is a total lie, that less than 1% of patients get addicted. It didn't come out yet that it was a total lie. Yeah. But like I felt, I knew, like I said, 50%, and maybe I had a couple hundred deaths logged on my website by then, and about half of them were from patients. So it just didn't add up. So when I read in the paper that they lied to my face, a grieving father, I knew they were rotten.
Yeah. You know, Ed, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I remember watching in the series that when people started overdosing and dying, they turned around and switched it on. Well, let's just say it's the addicts. So they were, you know, changing it around when I know the documentation was there saying it was people who have been prescribed Oxycontin, but yet they were still trying to blame these deaths on, well, it's people being, it's just people that are addicts. So let's push it. And I think Richard Sackler even brought that up in the series, that we'll just push it on that it's people just abusing it and they're not taking it as subscribed, when actually people that were taking it as subscribed was still overdosing.
Right. So he's famous for his line, we have to hammer the abusers. Yeah. They are the criminals. And that's exactly what they did. And not only did he say that, they put millions of dollars in PR behind that. Another thing that I found out, like I said, I was getting a lot of emails from these chronic pain patients. I'm thinking, how are they all emailing me? Well, I found out that, number one, many of the pain orgs were actually funded by Purdue Pharma. Some of them they actually ran. Not only that, they actually hired pain patients as contractors just to go out on the internet, talk up their drug, attack anyone who said anything bad about their drug. I had a guy he was in Hawaii. He was a chronic pain patient. And that's another thing. All the chronic pain patients I heard from, they were people with 3, 4 back operations, you know, real bad kidney disease. I mean, severe pain. They deserve to be, you know, if anybody needed it, they were patients. The whole problem with Oxycontin, and the show DOPESICK shows this, and I said that once I learned what was going on, if it was approved for severe pain only, we wouldn't have had the problems that we had. But Purdue sold dollar signs, so they were pushing it for headaches, menstrual cramps, minor pain. They were saying it was the drug to start with and the drug to stay with. you don't start with a heavy narcotic, you know?
You know, and what gets me too in the series is they kept upping the milligrams. I mean, I think it was 10, right? They started out with 10 and then they moved it up to 20.
Well, right. Initially, they had 10, 20, 30 maybe, and I'm not exactly sure on this. But then later, they came out with an 80, and they even had a 160 milligram pill, which for anybody who wasn't long-term opioid patient, if they took that, it was instant death. They did pull that off the market after maybe a year, but there was pills floating out there in circulation for a couple of years, and that did cause, like I said, anybody who did that, it was instant death. You know, another thing with my son, I didn't find out till a couple months later that him and his friend actually earlier that day, they did a Xanax. And then that night, they went to the party and they did an Oxycontin and they were drinking beer. So, you know, Purdue would say, well, it wasn't Oxycontin that killed your son. It was polypharmacy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah and no. Kids didn't start dying until Oxy hit the scene. And trust me, if my son wouldn't have done that Oxy that night, he would not be dead. And then that was just my son's case. And you know, as soon as I found out, I put that on my website. I wasn't trying to hide anything, but that didn't change the fact. And like I said, in the meantime, the deaths were piling up.
Ed, do you think that a problem with doctors is their ignorance in how to prescribe an opiate for pain? Because in 20 years, I think things have changed a lot. Do you think that the doctors have an obligation to be educated about how dangerous it is to prescribe a 10 milligram pain pill when it's the first time you take it? That's outrageous. I did have serious back surgery and was given 5 milligram, but I can't believe a doctor would prescribe anything over 10 for a first-time user. It's outrageous. That blows me away.
Well, especially back then, the doctors were being lied to by Purdue sales reps. They would tell the doctors less than 1% of patients get addicted.
I think I talked to a pain doctor, you know, and he says it's more like 15-20% develop problems. It's not just 1%.
But yeah, around 15% sounds about right, which is, you know, far cry from less than 1%.
Yeah.
It was a coordinated effort. It wasn't just that the Purdue sales reps were pushing it real hard. So in the background, you got Purdue funding all these pain orgs, okay, propping them up, which are, you know, parroting whatever Purdue told them to say, going with the 1% lie, how great it is. And it was a coordinated. Another thing which is documented, Purdue hired doctors. They paid them to give talks, and they would say it was medical education, but really it was a sales pitch. So they would fly doctors to Arizona and Florida, to give them a all expense paid golf weekend, and they would listen to a sales pitch from a sales rep, well, from a doctor who was being paid by Purdue. And, you know, it was a coordinated effort. So let me tell you, so with my website, once I figured out that Purdue was lying and how bad things were getting, and they weren't doing anything to stop it. The tone of my website, not only was it warning kids about Oxycontin, it was trying to warn about this company who made Oxy. So I did change the website name from Oxy Kills to Oxy Abuse Kills. But I started to hear from other parents, and they were asking me, what can we do? What can we do? Well, in 2003, we got a tip about one of these sales seminars in Orlando, Florida. So we decided to protest. So I flew down to Florida, had people from Rhode Island, parents from California. We wound up with 20 or 30 relatives. And we're doing this protest, and he said, well, we need a name. What are we going to call ourselves? So we came up with RAP, Relatives Against Purdue Pharma. And we held the second protest in 2003 outside this lavish resort in Orlando, Florida. And it was raining that day, and we were out there like soaked rats. And in between rain, don't you know that they sent out a maintenance worker? And this girl comes out, the maintenance worker, and she said, sorry, I got to do this. They're making me do this. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Well, she turns on the switch and the sprinklers came on.
Oh, geez.
So not only did we get right, they turned the sprinklers on us. And, but that kind of backfired because that was in the newspaper, that was on the TV station, and that's the kind of people we were dealing with, you know.
You know,
And that was 2003. So we would do that. So what also happened is in Florida, a sales rep named Karen White, who I saw on the show 48 Hours, she actually got fired from Purdue. So I watched 48 Hours. And so what happened to her was she had pill mill doctors on her sales route, and she refused to go to these pill mills. And basically, Purdue fired her because she refused to go to these pill mills. Now, of course, when they fired her, they said it was for bad performance. But Karen, stated, so she actually sued Purdue. So me and Lee Nuss, who helped me find, she's a co-founder of RAP, we went down to Tampa Bay, Florida, and we sat in Karen's trial just to give her support because we wanted the info to get out to the world. And we knew there would be some secrets coming out. So in 2003, the US government, the GAO, the General Accountant Office, they spent $2 million and a year investigating Purdue. And they produced this $2 million report. So when Karen went to sue Purdue, Karen had one lawyer. Purdue showed up with 10 lawyers just for one little sales rep. They knew what was at stake. Okay. So the first thing Purdue did, they got this GAO $2 million report thrown out of court. You're not allowed to use that. I think however they did it, they got that thrown out. Another thing they got, Karen's lawyer was not allowed to mention any deaths. So here you got a sales rep who doesn't want to go to pill mill doctors because people are dying, and they're not even allowed to tell the jury that people are dying from this drug. So they were in a hole, and like I said, so he did the best he could. The trial lasted a week. And I heard some testimony, some of the inside sales stuff, some of the stories. Karen went to the one doctor. There was people sitting there. They looked dirty. They had track marks, some of them. Mm-hmm. And she said, I ain't going back. And her manager told her to go back. Another thing Purdue wanted to do, Karen would tell the doctors, 10, 20 milligrams, that's good to start patients on. Her manager wanted her to tell them, no, you start them on the 40 milligram. And Karen, who actually had a degree in chemistry, said, no, that's crazy. So unfortunately, you saw where that was going with the 10 lawyers and everything against her, and the GAO, her lawyer was counting on that government. I mean, it was 3 inches thick, this report. Yeah. And was very damning about Purdue Pharma. Couldn't say that. So the jury came back and found Purdue not guilty. Jeez. But I was there, and I'm glad I was, because Karen had to sign a gag order. Purdue threatened to sue her, countersue for court costs, which is very high with 10 lawyers, right? Mm-hmm. They were going to countersue her if she didn't sign this NDA, a gag order, basically. So she was gagged. All the evidence was sealed. And luckily I was there. So I sent emails. I put it on my website. I did what I could do to get the word out. And that's how Purdue got away with this for so long. Every lawsuit, well, in the beginning, they would crush people with their lawyers. But after so much time, they had so many lawsuits that they just started settling. So they would pay people off, but the deal was you have to seal the evidence. And in some cases, the evidence was not only sealed, it was physically destroyed. Oh, so, I mean, it was very, very disgusting. But so we started hearing rumors around 2005 that there was an investigation in Virginia by the federal government. And so we were very happy about that. So this is a lot what DOPESICK's about, the whole investigation. And I don't want it's well recorded what I'm going to say, but you still got to see DOPESICK, because, when I try to tell the story, I get overwhelmed. But I realize why now. DOPESICK is 8 episodes, 8 hours, and that only takes you up to 2007. Yeah. So this is how long this has been going on. This is how complicated it is. And it gets overwhelming, but let's go. So they started to do an investigation, and as it turns out, they had Purdue Pharma dead to rights. The prosecutors in Virginia did a great job. Rick Mountcastle, who is in DOPESICK, he was the lead investigator. John Brownlee was the U.S. attorney. And so what happened was Rick knew he had to cross the T's and dot the I's. He wrote up a 120-page memo. 120-page memo listing their crimes with evidence. Okay? Mm-hmm. He sent that to DOJ. in Washington. Well, in the meantime, Purdue hired Mary Jo White, who used to be the SEC commissioner. They also hired Rudy Giuliani, not to be in court, but to lobby for them at the Justice Department. So the Virginia guys, Rick and John Brownlee, they wanted to charge the executives with felonies. And the thinking was, came out in DOPESICK. The thinking was, let's charge them with felonies. One of them will flip and testify against the Sacklers. Okay? The Sacklers, us, Rap, and other parents, we knew the name Sackler, but we just thought they were the owners. It was the president and vice president that was guilty of these crimes. We didn't know Richard Sackler was a hands-on owner.
Yeah.
So 2007, they wanted to charge them with felonies. They should have been charged with felonies. Well, the brass at the DOJ wouldn't let them do it. So as it turns out, Purdue Pharma wound up pleading guilty. The company, and not Purdue Pharma, they even got a holding company called Purdue Frederick to plead guilty. And why? Because if you're guilty of felony, you can't deal with Medicaid anymore, Medicare. So it was a total whitewash. But at the time, it was a record fine, $600 million. But we were hoping the judge didn't sentence them yet. So us parents, a lot of the Rat parents and other parents, there was 19 of us. We were invited to give a victim statement in Abington, Virginia. So we all went up there. We held a rally beforehand, and we were all given just 1 minute to talk, which ain't a lot.
Yeah.
But there was 19 of us. And we talked and we begged the judge to give them jail time. After we all talked, the judge, he was apologetic to us. He was apologetic. He actually agreed that jail time would be just in this case, but he has to go by the guidelines that the prosecutors gave him. Well, the judge never got to see the 120-page prosecution memo. It got buried in Washington, D.C.
Oh my gosh.
And to this day, that memo is buried. Okay? But what leaked out was a 6-page summary of that memo. And it details all the felonies that they were going to get charged with, but they didn't get charged with because of the lobbying by Giuliani and Mary Jo White and other people. And it was a travesty. So Purdue wound up paying at the time a record fine of $600 million. The 3 executives who got charged and got probation, they had to pay a total of $34 million. But guess what? Purdue paid the $34 million, okay? And not only that, they gave 2 of the executives $1 million bonuses. So they paid $600 million, but then later it was reported that year Purdue had sales of $2 billion. So they paid less than half they made in 1 year. They got to walk away, and you would think that they would maybe be a little more proper and slow things down. No, they they hired more salespeople. And as the sales went up, the deaths went up. And again, the whole time they have PR firms battling all the stories that are coming out about the deaths and lobbying. It was no accident. It was literally a conspiracy. Yeah. If there was ever a case for RICO, the RICO Act, which is, used against organized crime for a conspiracy, that was the case. And like I said, the prosecutors wanted to charge them with felony and they didn't. So nothing really happened. And not only that, now you have other pharma companies watching Purdue, saw that nothing happened to them. So they took Purdue's playbook and boom, the opioid epidemic exploded after 2007. It was getting bad going into 2007. But after Purdue walked away with no jail time, it literally exploded. And it's one of the great, HBO, they did Crime of the Century, which you saw some of that documentary. Yeah. And it really is Crime of the Century. Never has there been a crime, a white collar crime, because it's white collar, a white collar crime that has caused so many deaths. To me, it's the bloodiest, biggest white collar crime ever, not just of the century.
Yeah, yeah, I'd have to agree with you. We're going to stop for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, Ed, I don't know if my numbers are right. I was doing a little bit of research, but I'd like to talk about how many deaths have happened from the opioids or from Oxy in the last 20 years. I'd also like to discuss a little bit the corruption.
Right.
There is so much damn corruption and greed out there, and people are losing their lives because of it. I mean, I'm really struggling, and I've always kind of been a fan, even though I've lived in some other states, doing construction and that, and I'm from Utah, but I always thought Giuliani was, pretty flippin' cool dude. And then when I saw DOPESICK and saw what was happening, I'm like, son of a bitch, even this guy was bought off, basically, in a way,
It was a gun for hire. When we come back, I'll tell you all about the FDA.
Yeah, we definitely want to hit the FDA because I've had a bad feeling about the FDA for 20, 30 something years. So yeah, let's stop for a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Have you ever been in a car accident? Do you know what to do after being in a car accident? Are the insurance companies going to take care of you? Hi, I'm attorney Rick Heaton with the Law Office of Bobby Udall. I will help you through the process and answer all of these questions. I give every single client my cell phone so they can talk to me whenever they need. Let me deal with the insurance company so you can focus on getting better from your injuries. Call me at 385-330-0226. Again, my cell phone number, 385-330-0226. Don't call the insurance company first. Call attorney Rick Heaton at 385-330-0226.
This is Gregory, owner of Lift Up Concrete, proudly serving the Wasatch Front for the last 12 years, lifting sunken flatwork for both residential and commercial applications. Only fully trained professionals lifting concrete at your residence with the same quality of material and method used at every commercial job we ever do. Don't replace it, lift it. liftupconcrete.net, 801-792-4535. Contact us at liftupconcrete.net, or if you're looking for a complimentary quote, 801-792-4535. Again, 801-792-4535. Again, this is Gregory, Lift Up Concrete Lifting.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Other Side of Addiction. And gosh, this first half has just been incredible. Again, this episode is brought to you by our platinum sponsor, Matter Behavioral Health. We are very, very grateful for these guys and so appreciative of their support and belief in what we are doing. So, guys, thank you so much for all your love and your kindness. And we also want to throw out there, thank you to all our other sponsors. We've got a lot of other really great sponsors out there that's really helped us get this show going and getting out there some more. And having some incredible guests on the show like Ed today. I mean,
Yes.
man, this is some good stuff. And I remember, Ed, but as the series started going in DOPESICK, I think it was probably about the third or fourth episode, I could really start feeling my blood boiling. You know, going, I just cannot believe that these people are getting away with this stuff. And like Ed was saying, I mean, this was back in like 2001 to 2007 time. I mean, and they're getting away with this shit. And it's just blowing me away. Just the greed and you know, they're wanting to make billions of dollars, and they're doing it, and they're using some of that billions of dollars to help pay off other people. But now Ed, correct me, because I know that you are on top of this. And correct me if I'm wrong, which I probably am, but if I understand right, in the past 20 years, there's been over 500,000 Americans die from Oxycontin. Is that correct?
It's probably more. I will tell you, Oxycontin came out in 1996. Since Oxycontin came out, now these ain't all Oxycontin deaths, but there's been over 1 million since 96. 1 million deaths.
Wow. Now, I was just going to say, now, this is another thing that really ticks me off. And, you know, I mean, we don't like to get into the politics and all that stuff here on this show because this is about addiction and helping people and things. But, you know, in 2020 when the epidemic came out, the COVID, and all the stuff that they pushed and how many people are dying and blah, blah, blah. And I tell you what, I know the time frame isn't as long as what Oxy is. Why I almost said the F word. Why the hell are they not frickin' doing shit with this? You know, why the hell isn't this this should be on the list, number one, as far as I'm concerned. And
Me too.
You know, as the listeners out there, if you agree with me or not, that's okay. We all have our own way of looking at things. But we're so busy pushing, put a mask on and stop spreading COVID, but yet a frickin' pharmaceutical company is killing thousands and thousands and thousands of people, especially our youth, who haven't even had a chance to get their life going, and nothing's happening to these people.
No, nothing is. I was going to ask you, Ed, what repercussions were done to these pill mills, these unethical doctor drug dealers? What has been done?
Well, some of them, like for instance, the pill mill doctor from Bensalem, PA, who flooded my neighborhood, and my son got one of the last pills he put on the street. I couldn't prove that, but I didn't have to. That doctor wound up getting 30 years in jail.
Good.
Which he fully deserved, okay? But there are so many doctors who haven't done one day in jail. So if you guys or anybody ever watches Crime of the Century on HBO, they get into Dr. Lynn Webster from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
He is a very famous pill mill doctor. Now he'll tell you he wasn't a pill mill, but you watch the show and you make your own decision. Okay? I forget the exact number of patients that died under his care from overdoses. It was a 20 or 30. I forget the number. You could Google him. There's been stories. He's, you know, he's been in so many lawsuits. I'm just mentioning him because he's one of the most famous in Crime of the Century. Dr. Andrew Kolodny stated that he believes he has to be, if not the highest paid, one of the highest paid speakers for the opioid industry in the country. He was one of the paid speakers.
Yeah.
And
That's one of the things, Ed, that also shocked me in the DOPESICK series is Purdue, and you got to hand it to them, smart, extremely smart how they went about this, but how they would hire people from the FDA or get these doctors and they would bring them on their payroll.
that's called the revolving door. Let me give you my favorite Michael Keaton quote, the star of DOPESICK, talking about on one of the late night talk shows. They were talking about it, and the guy was saying what you just said, how smart they were. Michael Keaton said, "Yeah, it's genius if you're Satan."
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Evil geniuses. They are. They were evil geniuses. But they'll, you know, we're all going to meet. We're all going to meet our maker one day. So
Yes.
that's all I had to say about that.
Yeah.
But you brought up the FDA, which is a good segue. So let me go back. So I mentioned the 120-page memo. So that has never seen the light of day yet. Okay. But the 6-page summary of the 120-page memo revealed this. So when Oxycontin got approved, Richard Sackler actually bragged. They got Oxycontin approved in 11 months, like a record time. Usually it takes years. Okay. Also, when they went to the FDA and they told the FDA and they negotiated with them, and the guy in charge of the approval was named Curtis Wright. So Curtis Wright, as it turns out, he invited Purdue down. Purdue got a hotel room. Curtis went over to that hotel for 3 days. They actually wrote up the wording for the approval process. They were given a golden ticket when it was approved in record time. They were allowed to say it is extended release opioids, which that's what Oxycontin is believed to be less prone to abuse than immediate release opioids. Believed.
Yeah, believed. And that one word did it.
insert. This is in the insert that Purdue sales reps took and ran with. Believed. No test. That was another thing. Usually you guys show all these tests. Anything you say, you need tests to back it up. Purdue didn't have any tests. They didn't do any tests. And as it turns out, they did do tests, but it didn't turn out for them. So they never had to produce the test. And Curtis Wright met with Purdue reps for 3 days in a hotel. And so who wrote that wording? Well, guess what? In depositions, no one will admit it. Curtis Wright said Purdue wrote it. Purdue says he wrote it. So you don't even know actually who wrote it, but it was a lie, a blatant lie, and you don't have an official meeting. So, okay, so Curtis Wright does that. A couple years later, he leaves the FDA, takes a job at some little drug company. He's only there 11 months. Then who hires him after that drug company? Purdue Pharma hires Curtis Wright.
Imagine that.
For almost $400,000 a year, starting salary. He tripled his government salary. You know, I always say Purdue is villain number one. The FDA is villain number two. Okay?
Yeah.
What they did by hiring him, it's called the revolving door. It's not illegal. It should be illegal. Okay? It smells, anybody with half a brain could see what occurred there. Okay? And so make a long story short, it's called a revolving door. It breeds corruption. Another thing Purdue did, when they heard there was an investigation, they actually hired away some of the investigators from the government to work for Purdue. And they've done this with lawyers too. When they were getting sued, big suits, they would hire a lawyer or two away. And then lawyers say, well, we're not going to talk about the Purdue case. Yeah, right. You know, it's called a revolving door. It should be illegal. One of the things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to start right here. So the FDA just got a new commissioner, Robert Califf. Okay. So he was controversial because he's very friendly to pharma. Well, he promised Elizabeth Warren that he would not take a pharma job for 3 years after he leaves the FDA. And Warren voted for him on that promise. Well, I think that should be the standard. Any of these government regulators, whether it's the FDA or the SEC, who oversees the stock market, once you leave government, you shouldn't be allowed to work for the people you oversaw for at least 3 years.
Yeah, agreed.
Right now, you literally could be watching Bear Stearns quit the government and go to work for them on Monday. Curtis Wright could have went immediately to Purdue, but Richard Sackler said, that would look too bad. So they waited 11 months. Whippy. Everybody sees what went down. And it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, this again, I want to push that series DOPESICK because it is. Oh yeah, you definitely have to watch it. It is in Ed's grabbing the book, and it's Beth Macy who wrote the book.
Yep.
And,
started with the book. The book's good, and this DOPESICK, the series, actually covers a lot more, but there's more details and different storylines in here. Yeah. Anybody who watches DOPESICK, if they like it, get the book, or if you read the book, make sure you watch HULU. So that brings us up to 2007. So what happened after 2007? I'm going to tell you.
All right.
So Purdue, for years, one of the things they were asked about, well, can't you reformulate Oxy to make it abuse resistant? Oh, yeah, we're working on that. Actually, in 2002, they were under a lot of scrutiny. They says, oh, we're going to come out with an abuse resistant Oxy. And the heat backed off, especially after 9/11. Speaking of 9/11, so 9/11 happens. So in August 2001, they had the first congressional hearing. Purdue was feeling the heat. 9/11 happens. The vice president of sales sends out a company-wide voicemail. Now that America is focused on yesterday's tragedy, now would be a great time to visit your high prescribers. That was a voicemail that came out in Karen White's trial, by the way.
Holy
That
cow.
they actually did that. They saw 9/11 as a money-making opportunity. So that's just one of the many outrages that they've done. So after 2007, instead of slowing down, they pumped it up, but they had a little problem. Oxycontin's patent was running out. So, wow, look at that. Wow, we got this new Oxycontin abuse resistant. If you crush it or snort it, it won't work because it turns to gel. Something like that. They didn't come out with that till the patent was running out. So they get the FDA to approve the new Oxy. Okay, but not only did they get them to approve the new Oxy, they told the FDA that the old Oxy was so dangerous that nobody should be able to sell the old generic version. Like, it's too dangerous. The FDA agreed to that. So for 10 years, Purdue fought any claims that Oxy was dangerous and it was too easy to abuse. But now they were actually agreeing with that. It was unbelievable. So they got the new Oxy approved. They got generics killed. So they got the market again. So what had happened was doctors were told, well, as soon as the new Oxy took hold, Purdue lost 25% of their 80 milligram sales. So why would patients all of a sudden stop taking the new Oxy? It's because they weren't patients. They were flooding the streets with it. And now because you couldn't snort it or you couldn't inject it, well, you could, but it was a lot harder. People didn't want that. It didn't affect patients. People who swallowed it, it worked the same way. They lost 25% of sales. Okay, so that's even more evidence. That's 2010. But what happened too, now Oxy dries up. You got all these people addicted, and unfortunately, they're either going to go through horrible withdrawals, or what had happened was the Mexican cartels were following pill mills to small town America, and they were setting up distribution of heroin, black tar heroin. This is documented in another good book called Dreamland. So as soon as people couldn't get Oxy, a lot of them switched to heroin. And, they started snorting it just like they would do with their Oxys. But it's just a downward spiral because you need more and more.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Purdue literally created a generation of opioid addicts. And after 2010, a lot of them who couldn't get pills anymore moved to heroin, which just made the overall opioid epidemic even worse than it was. And so personally, me, after the new Oxycontin came out, the news stories really died down, and I was burned out. So I semi-retired. Like, I would follow news stories, but I wasn't active in doing anything. And then in 2018 or 2019, the state of Massachusetts. Now remember, there was other lawsuits, but every lawsuit got settled and the records were buried. Massachusetts launched a lawsuit, and not only did they sue Purdue, they sued the Sacklers. They named the Sacklers. More importantly, they got a Massachusetts state judge to allow them to put their lawsuit up on the internet. So their lawsuit, anybody could read, and it had a lot of evidence in there. And I read that lawsuit and I said, oh my God, they got them dead to rights. I said, I got to get back involved. So I got more. I called up some old people from RAC, started talking to them. We're starting, discuss things that we could do. And all of a sudden, there's hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits, if not thousands, against Purdue and the Sacklers. So 2019 September, Purdue Pharma files bankruptcy. I read that headline. I was happy. Finally, they're going out of business. I was happy till I read the article. They're filing for bankruptcy, and the Sacklers are going to contribute $3 billion, but only if they get civil immunity for anything. Not only the Sackler family, but shell companies, anybody who practically ever worked for them, who was anybody, was going to get immunity. I read that article. I said out loud, this is a scam. This is a bankruptcy scam. This is nothing but a way for Sacklers to pay immunity. So then more and more stories started to come out. So from 2007 to 2019, they took $10 billion out of the company and stashed most of it overseas. So they're offering to pay $3.5 billion. Well, they took $10 billion in blood profits out, and they're going to give back less than 1/3 and get immunity and live happily ever after. Bankruptcy scam. So I wound up getting involved in that. I joined in it. I didn't know nothing. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't know nothing about bankruptcy. But anyway, so we formed a committee, me and some other people. One of them's Nan Golden. She's a famous artist who has done protests and gotten the Sackler name taken down from museums like the Metropolitan Museum in New York. So there was 5 of us, and we got a pro bono lawyer, and we filed every objection we could to try to slow down this Purdue scam. Our lawyer would bring up points in court, and this is talking about a scam. So Purdue was able to pick the judge.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, should be illegal, right?
Yes.
Just like the FDA guy going to a hotel room should be illegal. No, bankruptcy has a weird law. If you open a office, it could be nothing more than one room PO box type thing in any county. You can file bankruptcy. So they picked White Plains, New York, where there was one bankruptcy judge who had a reputation of being pro company. So they knew who the judge was going to be before anybody else knew. So they had a hand-picked judge. Well, our lawyer, every time he got to speak in court, half the time this judge ridiculed our lawyer. Didn't matter if he was making a good point or not. And it was very frustrating. Some newspaper articles were written saying that this judge, this handpicked judge, ain't even hiding his bias. Not even hiding his bias. Well, make a long story short, after a year and a half, the judge approves Purdue's bankruptcy scam plan. But guess what? It was appealed. And sure enough, the appeals judge looked at this, started asking hard questions that Judge Drain would not ask, and overturned the plan.
Wow.
So as it sits now, not only that, this judge said what our lawyer was saying. Okay. And the biggest thing was these non-consensual third-party releases. And what I mean by that is Purdue was willing, or the Sacklers were willing to put up $3.5 billion if you give us immunity. Well, I got a claim. I'm not agreeing to that. I don't agree. Well, the judge was going to give it to him anyway. That's a non-consensual release. That is illegal and unconstitutional. Okay? They made a mockery. They tried to make a mockery of the bankruptcy system. 2007, they already made a mockery out of the justice system. Okay? So now they're trying to do the bankruptcy system. So as it stands now, the plan has been overturned, but of course now Purdue's appealing that. This might wind up going to the Supreme Court. Not only that, Purdue, with the non-consenting states, it upped the offer several times. So they went from offering $3.5 billion to $5.5 billion. Sounds like a lot of money, okay? Well, let me tell you, the victims, the average victim is going to get $5,000.
Heck, that doesn't even pay for the burial.
Well, exactly. Wouldn't even pay for my son's burial.
Yeah.
Me, because my son was never prescribed it, I might get zero. I'm either going to get zero or $3,500. I was never in this for the money. I don't care about that. They're getting away with murder. They are paying for immunity. The good thing is it doesn't cover criminal immunity, okay? But going back to 2007, you saw what the DOJ did then, right?
Yeah.
Well, in 2020, Purdue pleaded guilty again to felonies, okay? They pleaded guilty again to felonies, no jail time, no probation even for anybody. And the headline was, Purdue fined $8 billion. But in reality, they're in bankruptcy. They ain't ever going to pay the $8 billion. The Sacklers had to pay $256 million. That was the fine. $256 million for pleading guilty to the same crimes they pled guilty to in 2007. Okay, so it's so complicated. So after DOPESICK ran, I'm thinking, what can we do? So we got to go down and we got to protest in front of the DOJ. So Rap and other people, we called a rally, and on December 3rd, we went and we held a protest at the DOJ, asking the DOJ to review the evidence. Not only that, the Attorney General of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, who was very outspoken against Purdue's crimes, she said she did agree to settle, but she said on an NPR interview, the guy asked her, well, how come you don't file criminal charges? She said the states are not equipped to file criminal charges. Then the guy says, well, have you seen evidence? Should the DOJ file criminal charges? She says, yes, I have seen evidence, and the DOJ should file criminal charges. So this is an attorney general, an insider who has saw the inside evidence, saying the DOJ has the evidence and they should file criminal charges. When I read this, I knew I wanted to go to DOJ in Washington. And on December 3rd, there was 200 parents there, and we had speakers. We had Danny Strong, the showrunner from DOPESICK, spoke. Rick Mountcastle, the lead investigator from 2007, spoke at our rally. Paul Pelletier, a fraud investigator from 2007, spoke at the rally. Dan Schneider, the pharmacist. There's already a book. One of the people involved in the Purdue bankruptcy who was on the official committee, his name's Ryan Hampton. He was so disgusted, he actually resigned and wrote a book about how crooked this bankruptcy is. That book is called Unsettled. And anybody who wants to read a crime story, get Unsettled by Ryan Hampton. Another thing that came out was another book called Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keith, and that's all about the Sacklers. More and more evidence came out. The Attorney General of Massachusetts says the DOJ has the evidence. So one of our goals doing this was we requested a meeting with the DOJ. Now, we requested a meeting 3 times before, but after our protest, we were granted a meeting. And last week, we had a meeting, members of RAP and members of the Ad Hoc Committee on Accountability met with the DOJ. They're not allowed to say anything, but they heard us out. And I told them what Maura Healey said. So the ball's in their court. So anybody listening, please say a prayer. And you can do more than say a prayer, because Al will list how to write the DOJ. My name's Ed Bisch. I'm on Facebook. At the very top of my profile, it's how to write the DOJ about the Sacklers. You just tell them that they need to be investigated. If you're personally hurt by them, put your story in there. But anybody can write. And the more letters sent to the DOJ, we're asking you to send it to Merrick Garland. The more that write, the better chance we have of something happening. Another thing, on Netflix this summer, Painkiller. Painkiller was the very first book about Purdue's crimes. Painkiller was published in 2003. 2003, their crimes were known enough to write a book about it. Painkiller's coming out on Netflix, and I am looking forward to that, and that's going to shine more of a spotlight. Because DOPESICK, I watch Twitter, I watch Facebook. Anybody who didn't know a lot, and then that's most people, when they watch that, everybody says the same thing. How are they not in jail?
Yeah.
How were they never charged with a crime? And hopefully when people see this painkiller, it's going to be more and more. And like I said, if you want to make a difference, I need you to send an email to the DOJ. If you're on Twitter, @EJB1893, EJB1893. And at the very top of my profile on Twitter is how to write the DOJ, and there's a lot of good info. Also on Facebook, RAP, I have a page. Our Relatives Against Purdue Pharma, just search that, and people can make a difference. And you guys can make a difference too.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure this gets out there, because with us doing this, Ed, we wanted to do this as like a special episode. So we've got a lot of shows in our coffer that are still needing to come out, but usually when we do a special episode, we jump on it and get it out as quick as possible. So this is something that we want to get out. And then also what we will make sure of, as we do with all our guests that come on the show, once I get the link, we will send you the link, and you can do with it whatever you want. You can put it on your Facebook page. You can put it on whatever you want to do with it. I mean, because we want to help you spread the word as well. And you just said it here just a second ago that a lot of people don't know about this, because I never heard about it until somebody that I know, one of my friends, said, "Hey, have you watched DOPESICK yet?" And I'm like, "No, never heard of it. What's it about?" And he knew, I was doing this podcast, and he told me about it, and we finally got a Fire Stick and got it all set up. And I told my wife, I says, "This is the first thing I want to watch. If we have Hulu now, I want to watch DOPESICK." And I am so grateful that I did. And now I'm telling everybody about it that I can think of, saying, you've got to watch this, because Ed, I agree with you 100%, and I'm sure Sylvia does as well. We got to get it out.
Ed, I have to tell you, I'm going to cry.
It's okay. We have tissue right here.
I am so impressed with your strength that you seem to not be afraid. And I am right now. I have 6 children. 3 of them are affected with drugs. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle, that no one is hearing me. And I am so happy to meet you, to know of your fight against Big Pharma, against Purdue. I am so impressed, and I really did need to be here to hear you, to give me that support, because I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle. I'm watching my children be so affected. I'm waiting for the day when, like you, I will get a phone call that one of them is dead from drugs, and one did actually die. He was revived from fentanyl. And I just feel like there is so much awareness that we have to tell the people of this world. It's all about money, and it feels like this country, that people with power and money will use any bad event to distract from the real problem, which is really killing our people, and that is drugs.
Yeah.
Right. And so sadly now, I'm very active on Facebook, and look up this group. It's called Lost Voices of Fentanyl. Okay. And so they're very active, because most of the deaths now are from fentanyl.
Yes.
And a lot of it is actually fentanyl poisoning, because there's fake pills out there, and kids think they're buying a Xanax.
Yes. That was my other issue. I have real problems with the doctors. I have some older grandchildren. My granddaughters in junior high sometimes we'll sit and talk, and they said one of their biggest concerns is that if a friend has anxiety or tells their parents, I'm depressed or I have ADD, doctors are prescribing teenagers Xanax. I think the other drug we need to go after is Xanax.
No, it is far too easily prescribed, and
they're making
it's
Xanax
a crutch.
to look like fentanyl, or fentanyl to look like Xanax.
You'll see this if you watch any of them shows. It was Arthur Sackler, the great, going back to the 50s. He made Valium the number one drug in the country. So, and all the benzos, they're in the Valium family, and it's down. So what one of these parents told me, because they seen another show I was on, and I said about Eddie, and the first time I heard the word Oxycontin, he was dead from it. And they said, I want you might not realize what happened to you 20 years ago is happening to parents every day now with fentanyl. Because kids are dying, high school kids, and in a lot of the cases, the parents never even heard of fentanyl. So this group I'm involved in, Lost Voices of Fentanyl, they're trying to get the word out. They're also trying to make it a point, these are fentanyl poisonings. When somebody thinks they're buying a Xanax and it's a fentanyl pill and they take it and die, they were poisoned.
Right.
And so it's a mess. It's officially now we're over 100,000 deaths a year.
Jeez.
And that's undercounting. So we need drastic action. And yes, I am talking about Purdue. I'm talking about the Sacklers, because if they didn't do what they did, the architects of the opioid epidemic, things would not be nearly as bad today if not for them. And so I'm going to wrap this up, but I will tell you just one more thing. So when Purdue first started to market Oxycontin, there was like 7 states, maybe 10, that had triplicate. They had a rule. If you wrote an opioid, you had to do a triplicate prescription pad, and you had to send it to the state. The state actually got a copy. So Purdue, they said, well, we're not going to push hard in them states. So these 7 or 10 states, they didn't really market that hard in. And don't you know, when they looked at the stats, the deaths for them states were lower than the states that Purdue marketed in. Not only were the deaths lower then, even years later, the heroin deaths in them states were lower than when Purdue over-marketed their drug. That's further evidence that they are the architects, and you might even say the cause of the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
And there's one more show I want to mention that Beth Macy's on, Dr. Art Van Zie's on, I'm on. It's called The Forgotten Epidemic, and it's on Paramount Network. The free Paramount. So if you can get Paramount, just search The Forgotten Epidemic. That is a really good documentary. And if you like DOPESICK, you'll like that, and vice versa. And if you got any questions, I'll answer them. But
yeah, Ed, man, I'll just have to even go off with what Sylvia was saying. thank you so much for continuing to fight. And I remember seeing it in DOPESICK. I can't remember who the one that was saying it, but they're saying we're just little people who can go after somebody so big. But a good friend of mine, about a month ago, we were talking on the phone, and he goes, that's the fear that a lot of people have, that they see somebody higher than them, so they're like, well, I'm too afraid to reach out, or I'm too afraid to go after it. Hey, they're just people.
Right.
And with what you are doing, and hundreds and thousands of other parents who have lost their children, and or even spouses, the more we start stepping up and sticking up for ourselves and going after these, somebody's got to listen. There's somebody out there that is going to listen, because even those two gentlemen on DOPESICK, when they first started doing their investigation, they were getting a lot of backlash on it too, but they believed so highly what they were doing. They made progress. They made a lot of progress in a short period of time, and they busted their asses to do it, but they still made it.
Rick Mountcastle is a true life hero, okay?
Yeah.
And he's still pushing for it. But 2007 they went to trial. Rick wrote the 120-page memo. He spent 5 years of his life investigating Purdue. He knows exactly. He wrote the memo.
Yeah.
It got crushed at the top. And right now, literally, the DOJ has the evidence. We have an insider saying they have enough evidence to prosecute. Do the right thing. I can't make them do it. I emailed them. I protested them. I'm begging, literally begging people. Send an email. Don't think it doesn't matter. I know there's been thousands of emails sent now, but we need thousands more. The more, the better. And I just pray that they do the right thing. And if they don't do it this year, I doubt that they ever would. And it'll be another crime. Yeah. So.
Well, Ed, again, we know you got to get. Thank you so much for your time and all this information that you shared with us. This was some really good stuff. You can see your passion behind it. So grateful for you, because it's people like yourself and RAP, that are going out there and making a difference. It may not seem that way, but I really do believe that all of you guys are making a huge difference. One thing.
Takes a lot of Davids to bring down Goliath.
There you go. Yeah. Well, he may have only did it with one rock, but with a lot more, it can happen, right? One thing, when you have time, I've got a lot of this information written down, but please email me, these books, the series, your Twitter, your Facebook, because we want to make sure that when this show is posted, we have that information there when we post it. We want to make sure that it's all there.
Email tonight.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I'm going to look for you on Facebook. I want to stay.
And friend me on Facebook. Yes. And I can point you to some good groups to help you.
Squeaky wheels. Yeah. That's what we will be.
That's right.
Awesome. Ed, again, my gosh, thank you so much. And if you know of anybody else who would love to share their story to get it out, please let us know, because we're here to help as many people understand addiction and what's happening out there in the world.
Okay, I will.
All right. Hey, guys, we're gonna leave you with this as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing. Recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.
Good
morning. This is Leticia with Computer Hospital. We are your computer repair experts for both PC and Mac. We are your community resource for all of your computer repair needs. What makes us different is that we want to fix your computer. We also do free diagnostics. We charge a flat rate labor, which means that you won't pay by the hour. All of our computer repair is done in-house with a fast turnaround time, and same-day service is also available. Feel free to stop by anytime without an appointment. We're located in Sandy at 8721 South State Street. Again, that's 8721 South State Street, or call us at 801-987-3993. Again, that's 801-987-3993. This is Leticia with Computer Hospital, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Hello there, this is Brad Neufeld with the Resilience Talk Network, and I would like to introduce to you Taffytown, one of our newest sponsors. Let me introduce you to Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek from Taffytown. We're proud sponsors of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Taffytown is a family-owned and operated business still operating in the Salt Lake City area for over 100 years. We manufacture some of America's best saltwater taffy.
What makes Taffytown stand out from all of the others?
We have a unique recipe, a whipped-style recipe that incorporates egg whites, evaporated milk, real sea salt. It's a unique product that is flavorful, melts in your mouth, and the best part is we probably have a flavor for anyone's liking, a flavor for any reason, for any season. We have unique flavors like chicken and waffles, maple bacon, frosted cupcake. New this year was a pineapple ghost pepper flavor.
That's awesome. Where can people find out more about Taffytown and all of its products?
You can check all of this stuff out. All of our products are available for sale on taffytown.com. We ship for free from our website, so all of our pricing on there is shipping included. Oftentimes we offer special promotions and discounts to our loyal customers, so do be sure to sign up for an account. And we look forward to seeing what we can do to make you smile with our taffy.
Where are you located?
We are currently located at 9813 South Prosperity Road in West Jordan, Utah, just at the foothills of the Copper Canyon mine.
Derek, taffy has always been a great gift to give. What are some of the creative ways Taffytown can help say thank you to others?
Yeah, if you're looking for gift ideas, whether to say thank you to friends or family, or maybe to your clients after such a difficult or successful year that you've had, you could look no further than to get a gift idea from taffytown.com. We offer pre-packaged gift boxes that say that it's saltwater taffy from the city of the Great Salt Lake, and it tells a little bit about the history of our community and making candy for so long. You can also do customized gifts to pick out just the right flavors or colors of candy for that special someone and deliver even a personalized message in that box to them. So please feel free to check out taffytown.com for any gift ideas this season.
Thank you so much, Derek. Please visit taffytown.com, that's taffytown.com, to find out more about the products and services that Taffytown offers. You won't be disappointed.
Do you know someone who's gambling with death due to an addiction? Do you know someone whose life is being turned upside down due to a loved one that's battling with addiction? Hi, I'm Al Richards. I am the host of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I started the podcast due to my wife's battle with alcohol. Let's just say I became addicted to her addiction. Our podcast is helping people understand a little more about those who have battled addiction and those who are hurting from their addiction. Through raw vulnerability, we share stories that help uncover the root causes of addiction. Shame felt on both sides, matter of the conscious and subconscious mind, continued beliefs, and often confusing paths of recovery. We collaborate with real people and their stories, as well as licensed professionals, to help our audience gain a better understanding of addiction. You can find us on Resilience Talk Network You can also find us on Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. That's Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up the Other Side of Addiction podcast.